During the peak of the Middle Ages, when Europe was entangled in a web of religious wars and political disputes, there emerged an enigmatic and powerful entity that continues to captivate our imagination even today. We're talking about the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar were a peculiar blend of religious piety and martial prowess, an elite military order that played a pivotal role in shaping medieval history. But their story is shrouded in secrecy, myth, and legend, leaving us with more questions than answers. In today's video, we embark on a journey to uncover the truth behind the enigma that is the Knights Templar. From their humble beginnings to their rise as formidable warriors and the eventual downfall brought about by envy and greed, we delve into the annals of history to bring you the fascinating tale of one of the most intriguing organizations that ever existed. So buckle up and join us as we explore the world of the Knights Templar. Now let's get back to our video. The Knights Templar were a holy order of warriors who dedicated their lives to the defense of Christendom. Founded in 1118, they became a prominent feature of medieval life until their dissolution in 1312. But what was the real nature of this secretive organization? What were their core values and beliefs, and how did they impact the course of history? The origins of the Templar Order can be traced back to the tumultuous period following the First Crusade. As European Christians gained control of Jerusalem in 1099, the need to protect pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land became apparent. A French knight named Hugues de Payens spearheaded the creation of an order dedicated to safeguarding these journeys. He assembled a group of 9 companions, taking an oath to remain celibate and serve as guardians of the Holy Sepulchre. On February 18, 1118, Pope Honorius II officially recognized the order, granting them the title of Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The choice of the name Templar was inspired by the belief that the order's headquarters near the Temple Mount in Jerusalem were situated on the grounds of King Solomon's legendary temple. This connection to biblical history imbued the order with a sense of sanctity and purpose. Templars were expected to live by a strict code of conduct, embracing poverty, chastity, and obedience. They were required to take vows of loyalty to the order and the church, committing themselves to a life of service and sacrifice. The order's distinctive white robes with a red cross served as a symbol of their dedication to Christ and their readiness to defend the Christian faith. As the Templars grew in number and influence, they played a significant role in the Second Crusade, arriving in 1147 to reinforce the beleaguered Christian forces. Although the crusade ultimately failed to capture Jerusalem, the Templars demonstrated their military prowess and strategic value on the battlefield. The primary objective of the Knights Templar was the protection of pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land. They faced the arduous task of escorting unarmed civilians through treacherous territories, often fraught with danger and uncertainty. Bandits, rival armies, and hostile local populations posed constant threats to the pilgrims' safety and well-being. The Templars' duty was to stand as a bulwark against these perils, ensuring the pilgrims could reach their destination safely. To carry out this sacred duty, the Templars established a network of fortified buildings known as commanderies throughout Europe and the Middle East. These structures served as safe havens for pilgrims, offering them shelter, food, and security during their long and hazardous journeys. Templars stationed at the commanderies were tasked with providing assistance and guarding them against potential attackers. The Templars also played a crucial role as shock troops in the Holy Land. They participated in numerous battles against Muslim forces, demonstrating exceptional skill and bravery in combat. One of their most notable victories came in 1148 at the Battle of Lisbon, where they played a pivotal role in helping the Portuguese recapture the city from Moorish control. Their military prowess earned them a reputation as fierce and disciplined fighters, contributing significantly to the Christian cause in the region. But it wasn't just about warfare. The Templars were also deeply involved in administrative and economic activities. They managed vast estates and holdings, which required skilled management to ensure their financial stability and growth. Templars were involved in accounting, taxation, and legal proceedings, showcasing their versatility and commitment to the order's multifaceted mission. The rise of the Templars coincided with a surge in trade and commerce during the Middle Ages. Recognizing the importance of protecting commercial interests, the order played an active role in safeguarding merchants and their goods. Templars often accompanied trading caravans, providing security and ensuring the safe passage of valuable merchandise, thus contributing to the prosperity of medieval economies. However, their duties extended beyond earthly concerns. The Templars also had a spiritual dimension to their roles. They were expected to engage in acts of charity, offering assistance to the poor and needy whenever possible. This commitment to helping those less fortunate was an integral part of their religious ethos, reflecting the Christian values they held dear. Despite their many contributions to medieval society, the Templars were not without their critics. As the order grew in power and wealth, it attracted envy and resentment from various quarters. Accusations of heresy and immorality surfaced, leading to scrutiny and persecution from both secular and religious authorities. King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the Templars, orchestrated a campaign to dismantle the order, culminating in the arrest of hundreds of Templars in 1307. False charges of heresy and secret rituals were used to discredit the order, leading to their dissolution in 1312. The last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was executed in 1314, bringing an end to the Knights Templar. Today, the legacy of the Templars lives on in history books, works of fiction, and popular culture. Their story continues to captivate people around the world, inspiring countless tales of bravery, mystery, and intrigue. The true nature of the Templars remains a subject of ongoing historical investigation and debate. While their reputation as ferocious fighters persists, a more nuanced understanding has emerged over time. Historians now recognize the Templars' diverse roles in medieval society, encompassing not only military service, but also administrative, economic, and charitable endeavors. Their impact on medieval life was multifaceted and significant. If you've made it this far, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. It really helps us out. Thanks for watching. As we wrap up our exploration of the enigmatic Knights Templar, several questions arise. What are your thoughts on the secrecy surrounding the order? Did the Templars hold forbidden knowledge or engage in illicit activities hidden from public view? Or was their reputation as a feared military force enough to ensure their mystique? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this captivating topic. Additionally, if you've ever visited any Templar sites or participated in events related to their rich history, we encourage you to share your experiences. Your first-hand accounts can provide valuable insights for those intrigued by the Templars. Furthermore, if you're interested in delving deeper into the world of medieval history or perhaps exploring other lesser-known aspects of the Knights Templar, please let us know. We're always eager to explore your suggestions and bring you more fascinating content on historical topics. And finally, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on our latest historical adventures. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time. Until next time, keep exploring the captivating narratives that have shaped our world. The Knights Templar, commonly referred to as the Templars, were a holy order founded during the medieval period with the primary objective of safeguarding pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land. Despite their religious calling, the Templars were also fierce fighters, known for their exceptional combat skills and unwavering bravery on the battlefield. During the medieval era, engaging in warfare was considered a righteous pursuit, particularly when it came to defending the Christian faith. Consequently, the Templars were often involved in military conflicts, where they distinguished themselves as formidable opponents. But how did these warriors fare in battle? What strategies did they employ, and what made them such effective fighters? Let's find out in today's episode. After the First Crusade, which resulted in the establishment of several Crusader states in the Levant, pilgrims from Europe began to travel there in large numbers. Initially, the primary responsibility for protecting these pilgrims fell to the Frankish rulers. However, as the number of pilgrims increased and the dangers along the way grew, it became evident that additional measures were needed. Pope Urban II recognized this issue on February 18, 1118, during the Council of Reims. He announced the creation of a new holy order called the Order of the Temple. This order would be dedicated to protecting pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. On March 1118, 1119, the formal establishment of the order occurred and Hugh de Payens, a knight from northern France, was selected as its first master. In the beginning, the order consisted of 120 knights who took vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Their main duty was to protect pilgrims on the road between the port of Jaffa and the city of Jerusalem. At first, the Templars faced significant challenges in the Levant. The region was predominantly Muslim, and the various Crusader states were frequently at war with the forces of Saladin. As a result, the Templars had to contend with hostile local populations and limited resources. Despite these obstacles, the Templars persevered and played a crucial role in helping the Crusader states hold on to their territories. They established a series of fortified buildings along the roads to Jerusalem, which served as shelters for pilgrims and also as military bases from which they could launch attacks against their enemies. Over time, the Templars grew in power and influence and became one of the most feared and respected military orders of the Crusades. They fought in many famous battles, including the Battle of Hattin in 1187, in which they were almost completely wiped out. During the early stages of the Crusades, the Templars primarily operated in the eastern Mediterranean region, particularly in the Levant. Their initial focus was on protecting pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. To achieve this goal, they established a network of fortified buildings, including the most notable, the Crac des Chevaliers, strategically positioned along the major routes leading to Jerusalem. These buildings served as vital stopping points for pilgrims, offering them a place of refuge and assistance during their long journeys. The Templars understood the importance of controlling these strategic locations as they provided essential support and security to those making their way to the Holy Land by securing the roads and offering aid to pilgrims. The Templars fulfilled their primary objective of ensuring the safety of travelers on their religious missions. As the Crusades progressed and the Templar Order expanded, their activities gradually shifted to include broader military operations. While still committed to protecting pilgrims, the Templars also engaged in battles against Muslim forces and other adversaries of the Crusader states. They became an integral part of the Crusader armies, participating in sieges, skirmishes, and major confrontations. This evolution in their role can be attributed to the changing circumstances of the Crusades and the growing need for military strength in the region. It is important to note that the Templars were not merely religious figures, but were in fact highly skilled and disciplined fighters. They underwent rigorous training in combat tactics and were equipped with heavy armor and weaponry. The Templars' military prowess became evident in various battles where they displayed great courage, strength, and strategic abilities. Their effectiveness as soldiers contributed significantly to the success of the Crusader states and their ability to withstand the pressures of the surrounding hostile territories. Initially, the Templars' military strategies revolved around their primary objective of protecting pilgrims. They patrolled the roads leading to Jerusalem, often traveling in groups to deter potential attackers. Upon encountering danger, the Templars formed defensive circles, utilizing their shields and spears to repel assaults. If attacked, they fiercely defended themselves until reinforcements arrived. When not engaged in combat, they provided aid and assistance to pilgrims, escorting them through dangerous areas and offering protection at their lodgings. Furthermore, the Templars established fortified buildings, such as the Crac des Chevaliers, which doubled as shelters for pilgrims and military strongholds. These structures allowed the Templars to defend against larger forces and provide a secure base for operations. Overall, their early military strategies were centered around defensive measures, self-defense, and providing security for pilgrims traversing the perilous roads to the Holy Land. However, as the Crusades intensified and the Templars faced more substantial threats, Their strategies evolved. They began to engage in offensive operations, attacking enemy forces and participating in broader military campaigns alongside other Crusader factions. The Templars' adaptability and willingness to embrace new tactics and challenges contributed to their enduring legacy as formidable warriors of the Crusades. While the Templars are remembered as valiant fighters, it is essential to acknowledge that they also encountered setbacks and defeats during the Crusades. One notable example is the Battle of Hattin in 1187, where the Templars suffered a crushing defeat against the forces of Saladin. This battle resulted in significant losses for the Templars and had profound implications for the Crusader states. The defeat at Hattin exposed the Templars to the risk of annihilation, forcing them to adapt their strategies and tactics to ensure their survival. It is important to study the reasons behind their defeats, such as underestimating their opponents, succumbing to arrogance, or failing to anticipate enemy strategies. By learning from these failures, we gain a more comprehensive understanding of the challenges and complexities faced by the Templars during the Crusades. Recognizing their defeats allows us to appreciate the full scope of their military history and the difficulties they encountered in the ever-changing landscape of medieval warfare. Early on, the Templars faced many challenges in the Levant. They lacked numbers and resources and had to contend with the hostility of the local population. The Templars initially struggled to establish themselves due to various challenges, including gaining acceptance from local rulers and overcoming logistical hurdles. Furthermore, they had to deal with the harsh desert environment and the threat posed by rival Christian factions. However, despite these obstacles, the Templars persevered. They forged alliances with other Crusader states, demonstrating their adaptability and willingness to cooperate with different parties to achieve their goals. Through strategic partnerships, the Templars gradually gained recognition and support, allowing them to overcome the challenges they faced and fulfill their mission. For instance, the collaboration between the Templars and the Knights Hospitaller led to the creation of a strong defensive alliance, while their cooperation with the princes of the Crusader states enabled them to participate in major military campaigns. By embracing diplomacy and forging alliances, the Templars were able to navigate the complex political landscape of the Levant and ultimately establish their prominence as a military order. It should be noted that the Templars' commitments to their founding ideals, such as protecting pilgrims and upholding Christian values, remained steadfast throughout their existence. Despite facing numerous challenges, the Templars never wavered in their dedication to their religious mission, which contributed to their lasting impact on the Crusades. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a thumbs up to help us grow. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for watching. With his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, our knight watches nervously over his charges. Bands of ferocious Muslims attack every caravan traveling along this road. His order, the Knights Templar, is charged with protecting these pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land, but they are woefully outnumbered. What he needs are more men, better weapons, and perhaps some divine intervention. Can he keep the pilgrims safe, or will all be lost? Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the craziest and most exciting stories from human history. In this episode, we'll explore the Knights Templar, one of the most infamous orders in history. You probably already know that the French king commissioned the order to guard pilgrims going to the Holy Land, but how did they go from that to becoming Europe's elite fighting force? And what led to their eventual demise? Let's dive in. The year is 1108 and the First Crusade has just wrapped up with Christian forces taking control of Jerusalem and several surrounding areas. While this new state of affairs gives Christians throughout Europe easier access to the Holy Land, there's a problem. Getting there is incredibly dangerous. The region is still very much in a state of war, and the journey from the nearest Mediterranean port to Jerusalem is fraught with danger. Bandits, highwaymen, and soldiers from neighboring Muslim states looking to get back what they lost all prowl these roads looking for easy targets. Enter the Knights Templar, a holy order founded by French nobleman Hugues de Pins. Originally consisting of 12 fellow nobles, the Templars set out to aid pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land, providing them security against those who would seek to prey on them. While they did not intend to engage in offensive operations, the Templars would fight should it become necessary to defend those under their care. Initially, the Templars wore the white robes of a religious order and followed the teachings of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who emphasized charity and service to others. By 1118, a decade after its founding, the order had grown to include both regular members known as the Order of the Temple and auxiliary fighters who joined them for specific missions. For the next few years, the Templars focused on their original goals, ensuring the safety of pilgrims journeying to the Holy Land and defending Christian forces stationed in the region. It wasn't a terribly difficult task, since the Templars had little to do. So they spent their free time constructing buildings in Jerusalem, such as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. However, in 1128, Muslim forces launched a massive offensive, capturing much of the Levant and pushing the Crusaders back to the coastal city of Jaffa. This forced the Templars to take action, escorting the thousands of refugees fleeing the war to the relative safety of Jerusalem. Around this time, the Templars received word that Pope Honorius II wished to meet with them, and so they traveled north to the Council of Troyes. There they met with the Pope and King Louis VI of France and were given several important gifts, including a headquarters in Jerusalem, permission to acquire property, and the title Knight of the Temple of Solomon, after the legendary Jewish temple believed to have stood on the Temple Mount. Soon after, the Templars were granted official recognition by the Church as a holy order, and thus their path as an elite military force was set. As the decades passed, the Templars found that their original mission was increasingly difficult to fulfill. See, as the order grew, so did the number of pilgrims wanting protection, but the Templar forces remained small. So instead of guarding pilgrims along the route to Jerusalem, they focused on guarding the cities and castles of the Crusader states. During this time, the Templars took on more and more enemies. They battled Muslim forces, rival European nobles, and even other holy orders. As such, they needed more manpower. Initially, only nobles could join the order, but soon commoners were allowed as well. This change had several effects. First, the flow of donations into the Templar treasury increased because commoners were far more numerous than nobles and could donate more easily. Second, the size of the Templar armies increased substantially, allowing them to take on larger roles in battle. By 1150, the Templars were a formidable fighting force. In 1164, they fought at the Battle of Haran, facing off against an invading force of Niceris. While the Templars were vastly outnumbered, they fought bravely, killing more than 2,000 enemy soldiers and capturing 2,000 more. But as the years went on, the Templars suffered several defeats, such as the Battle of Marge Ayun in 1179. While their commander, Gerard de Riedfort, had achieved victory earlier that day, he unwisely decided to press his advantage too far, resulting in the deaths of more than 1,000 Templars. Yet despite these defeats, the Templars continued to grow in strength and power. Their military hierarchy became stricter and more regimented, making them even more efficient in battle. And thanks to their close ties with the papacy, the Templars became a truly independent force. No king or lord could call them to his banner, and they answered directly to the Pope. This independence caused friction with the Crusader kings, but the Templars had too much power and prestige for any ruler to risk angering them. While the Templars excelled in warfare, they were still primarily seen as a holy order. But that changed during the reign of King Baldwin IV. When he became ill, he handed over the kingdom to his nobles and retired to a monastery. Upon hearing this, the Templar Grand Master, Gerald de Ridderford, marched on Jerusalem and forced Baldwin to relinquish control of the order to him. With this move, the Templars officially became a military power unto themselves, and king notables hated it. But as the years passed, the resentment the Templars felt toward the Crusader kings grew as well. See, while the Templars had initially been created to aid pilgrims, by the mid-12th century, their main goal was winning back the Holy Land for Christianity through any means necessary. As such, when Saladin recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, the Templars wanted to invade Egypt, but the Crusader kings refused, fearing reprisals from Saladin. This desire to take a more active role in the Crusades would lead to the Templars participating in 3 of the next 4 major expeditions. During the 5th Crusade, the Templars invaded Egypt and established a beachhead at the city of Gaza, but once reinforcements arrived, the Templars found themselves surrounded. Despite being massively outnumbered, the Templars fought hard. Under the command of William of Tyre, they defeated wave after wave of Muslim attackers, but eventually the Muslims infiltrated the castle, slaughtered the Templars, and captured many of their comrades. Not long after, the surviving Templars retreated to Jaffa, marking the end of their campaign. Devastated and demoralized, the Templars knew that they needed a victory to restore their honor. And they got their chance in 1229 when Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II invaded Egypt. This time the Templars played an advisory role, working with Frederick's troops and providing much-needed military expertise. Together, the two forces won a decisive victory, allowing Christian pilgrims safe passage through Egypt to Jerusalem. Once again, the Templars had proven themselves to be an elite fighting force. But as the decades passed, the Templar presence in the Holy Land dwindled. The reason, well, it's pretty simple, really. The Templars were European, most of the people living in Jerusalem, however, were not. As such, the Templars became less and less involved in the affairs of the Crusader states and returned to Europe. Unfortunately, their downfall was swift and brutal. In 1244, the Mongols attacked Jerusalem, sacking the city and murdering all within it. The Templars, however, refused to surrender, holding out for several weeks before succumbing to the Mongol siege. Over the next few decades, the Templars suffered defeat after defeat, losing almost all of their territory in the Middle East and returning to Europe in disgrace. Here, King Philip IV of France accused them of a number of crimes, including heresy. He then seized their lands and dissolved the order in 1312. Now check out what were the Black Death, or watch another video from our channel. For over 150 years, the legendary Knights Templar served as the elite shock troops of the Crusades. But this holy order of warrior monks didn't just fight Muslims in the Holy Land, they also clashed repeatedly with other Christian military orders like the Knights Hospitaller and the Teutonic Order. So why did the Templars have so many enemies amongst fellow Christians? And how did these internecine conflicts weaken the Crusader cause? To find out, let's explore the origins of these disputes. Originally founded in 1118, the Knights Templar were a holy order of monks who took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience like other religious orders. But unlike those orders who dedicated themselves to prayer and study, the Templars were trained in combat and served as ferocious fighters. Though commonly known as merciless killing machines, the Templars actually started out as a small force of 200 to 300 men tasked with protecting Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. By 1150, they'd grown to become a massive force with around 12,000 members. Given their status as God's holy warriors, the Pope granted the Templars a series of privileges intended to assist them in carrying out their mission. Most significantly, the Pope exempted Templars from the authority of local bishops, placed them under direct papal oversight, and gave them the right to collect tithes and donations. Such vast powers inevitably bred resentment from other monastic and military orders who jealously watched the Templars grow in wealth and influence. Amongst the most disgruntled parties were the Knights Hospitaller, a holy order founded in 1098 to provide medical aid and lodging to pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. While initially non-military, the Hospitallers became increasingly involved in combat after Muslim forces began harassing pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem. Over time, they transformed into a full-fledged military order with a vow of celibacy instead of chastity and grew to become one of the most important Christian military powers in the Holy Land. Yet this evolution placed them directly in competition with the Templars, who now dominated the landscape with their unmatched fighting prowess. This growing animosity is evident in contemporary chronicles, which frequently portray the two orders at odds. One example is the chronicler of the First Crusade, Fulcher of Chartres, who wrote of a battle between the Templars and the Hospitallers in 1118, where the Templars attacked the Hospitallers unprovoked, demonstrating the existing tensions between the two groups. But despite this narrative, it would be inaccurate to characterize the relationship between the Templars and Hospitallers as purely antagonistic. At times, the two orders cooperated, especially during major sieges and battles. For example, in 1148, both orders fought side by side against the Zengi army at the Battle of Cesar. But even during cooperation, their distinct cultures and goals often led to contention. One major point of conflict between the two was the control of key fortresses and trade routes in the Levant. Both orders coveted Crac des Chevaliers, one of the most important castles in northern Syria, as it controlled vital trade routes between Egypt and Antioch. After its capture by the Crusaders in 1144, the castle was awarded to the Hospitallers, enraging the Templars who believed they had priority claim to it. Similarly, Margat on the Syrian coast was another source of tension as it served as a crucial port for supplies reaching the Crusader states. When the Templars seized Margat in 1149, they refused to allow Hospitaller forces stationed nearby to enter, further aggravating their rivalry. This competition over resources was intensified by the fact that the Templars and Hospitallers appealed to the same potential donors back in Europe. Consequently, they were often portrayed as rivals vying for the favor of European nobility, which only fueled popular animosity towards each other. For instance, the chronicler William of Tyre recounted how the Templars accused the Hospitallers of betraying the Christian cause by accepting bribes and giving aid to the Muslims, though there's no evidence this ever occurred. As the Crusades dragged on and Crusader fortunes declined, suspicion and hostility only increased. With everyone fighting for their own interests, mutual recrimination and broken alliances became commonplace. As historian Bernard Hamilton put it, each order tended to act according to its own interest regardless of the effects on the others. This situation reached a boiling point during the Second Siege of Jerusalem in 1187, which resulted in the city's capture by Saladin and the expulsion of Christian forces. According to the Muslim historian Al-Kamil, the competing interests of the Templars and Hospitallers undermined the Crusader war effort. He claimed that the Templars, upon realizing Jerusalem was doomed, abandoned their posts and fled, while the Hospitallers hoped to negotiate a favorable surrender deal with Saladin, portraying them as traitors in the eyes of the Templars. While exaggerated, this account reflects how mutual mistrust paralyzed the defenders, allowing Muslim forces to prevail. It also demonstrates how the Templars and Hospitallers interpreted events through their own institutional lenses, further deepening their divide. But the problems facing the Crusaders were not limited to those within the Latin kingdoms. Another major rival of the Templars, the Teutonic Order, arose in the Holy Roman Empire and provided an alternative destination for European pilgrims. Originally called the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, they were founded in 1118 to assist German-speaking pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. However, the Teutonic Order soon expanded beyond their original purpose due to the increasing dangers faced by pilgrims along the way. In 1128, Pope Honorius II officially recognized them, a religious order with a vow of chastity, and allowed them to carry arms in defense of pilgrims. By the mid-12th century, the Teutonic Order grew to become one of the most powerful forces in the Holy Roman Empire, with significant land holdings in northern Germany and influence over secular rulers. Though separated by hundreds of miles, the Teutonic Order still intersected with the Templars both in the Levant and back in Europe. In the Holy Land, their competition for resources occasionally led to clashes. In 1166, for instance, Teutonic forces attacked a Templar convoy carrying supplies to the siege of Darum, causing casualties and damaging the Templar reputation. Meanwhile, back in Europe, their extensive networks of commanderies and churches overlapped, leading to disputes over land and influence. Tensions were especially high in the Rhineland, where the Teutonic Order held vast territories. Contemporary sources depict a hostile environment for Templars in these regions, with chronicles alleging that Teutonic forces robbed and killed Templars passing through their lands, though the veracity of these claims is questionable. Regardless, such incidents reveal the extent of antipathy between the two orders. Furthermore, the Teutonic Order pursued an independent foreign policy separate from the goals of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. In 1177, they allied with the Kingdom of Denmark against the Kingdom of Sweden, whereas the Templars remained staunchly loyal to the Crusader kingdom, highlighting their divergent paths. As the Teutonic Order shifted focus to consolidating power in the Holy Roman Empire and expanding into the Baltic region to participate in the Northern Crusades, their relationship with the Templars became increasingly distant. Still, the Templars' fate would be sealed by European politics rather than military conflict with other orders. By the early 14th century, the Templars had become immensely wealthy thanks to their extensive land holdings across Europe and lucrative banking activities. Unfortunately, this prosperity attracted the attention of King Philip the Fair of France, who owed the Templars large sums of money. With the backing of Pope Clement V, Philip launched a campaign to destroy the order, accusing them of heresy, immorality, and plotting against him. After a show trial, Grand Master Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake in 1314, ending the Knights Templar once and for all. Ironically, both the Hospitallers and Teutonic Knights failed to defend the Templars against Philip's machinations, perhaps hinting at the depth of animosity between the orders. In conclusion, the Knights Templar weren't just feared by the Muslims they fought against, but also by fellow Christian military orders like the Knights Hospitaller and Teutonic Knights. Competition for resources, differing strategic goals, and divergent paths after the fall of Jerusalem in 1187 all contributed to this. Moreover, the Templars' immense wealth and power eventually made them targets of European monarchs who exploited accusations of heresy and immorality to have them disbanded. Despite these conflicts, the Templars remain an iconic image of the Crusades, representing the ferocity and mystique of medieval warfare. To learn more about this legendary order, check out our series, Secrets of the Deadliest Orders, the Knights Templar, available on a streaming platform. Thanks for watching. After centuries of endless battles and fruitless campaigns, the year is 1291, and all that remains of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem are a handful of coastal cities and fortresses strung along the Mediterranean Sea like pearls on a thread. All around them, the surrounding countryside has long since fallen to the arms of the resurgent Muslims. And within these last bastions of the Crusader states, life is becoming increasingly grim as supplies dwindle and the shadow of the approaching Muslim armies looms ever closer. In the face of growing danger, the beleaguered Crusader princes strive to unite their ranks and present a strong front against the common enemy. But as centuries of mutual distrust and competing ambitions have shown, putting aside centuries of animosity is easier said than done. As cracks continue to grow within the Crusader camp, outside forces take advantage of the situation, exploiting any weakness to advance their own agendas. For centuries, the Holy Land had long been a battleground for the relentless conflict between Christian and Islamic forces fighting over this region of immense religious and historical significance. Now on the verge of disappearing completely, the Crusaders are beset by internal strife, unable to mount an effective defense against the rising tide of Islam, with their demise drawing ever nearer. Can the divided Crusader princes overcome their differences and fight back against the Muslims? Or will the last embers of the Crusader kingdoms be snuffed out, leaving the Holy Land in darkness once more? When the tides of war turned against the Crusaders in the late 13th century, the Crusader states found themselves reduced to a handful of coastal cities and fortresses, with Acre serving as the last great bulwark of the Crusader presence in the Levant. By this point, the kingdom had long ceased to exist. Decades of defeats at the hands of Islamic forces had whittled away their territory, leaving only fragmented Crusader principalities clinging to survival. A few years earlier in 1260, The decisive defeat suffered at the Battle of Angelut against the resurgent Mongols had marked a turning point in the fortunes of the Crusaders. From that point on, it was the Muslims who held the upper hand, gradually encroaching upon the remaining Crusader holdings. One by one, fortress cities fell to the relentless attacks of the Egyptian Mamluk Sultanate, forcing their inhabitants to flee westwards along the coast. By 1291, only 3 coastal cities remained in the hands of the Crusaders: Acre, Tyre, and Sidon. Of these, Acre, with its strategic location midway between Egypt and Syria, was of paramount importance to both sides. While the Muslims desired its capture to secure their hold over the eastern Mediterranean, the Crusaders knew that its loss would spell the end for their dominion in the region. Yet despite the gravity of their situation, the Crusader lords were unable to unite their ranks against the common foe. Each prince, preoccupied with his own interests and resentful of the others, saw an opportunity to expand his own domain at the expense of his neighbors. Acre, the largest and wealthiest of the remaining Crusader cities, found itself besieged on all sides by rival factions. To the south, the formidable Egyptian Mamluk Sultanate led by the ambitious Emir al-Ashraf Khalil threatened to engulf the city in a suffocating grip. Meanwhile, to the north, the forces of the Teutonic Order, driven by their own territorial ambitions, advanced steadily northward, laying siege to the cities of Safed and Capernaum. The people of Acre, already grappling with dwindling supplies and a mounting death toll, faced the prospect of being caught in the crossfire of competing Crusader ambitions. As if this dire situation were not enough, the arrival of the French King Philip the Fair's envoy added another layer of complexity to the precarious balance. The envoy's mission was twofold: to persuade the divided Crusader princes to unite against the Mamluk threat and to explore the possibility of a diplomatic solution to the conflict. But his presence only exacerbated tensions further, as each prince viewed the envoy's proposals with suspicion and self-interest. The Teutonic Order, ever eager for expansion, saw the envoy's call for unity as an unwelcome intrusion on its territorial ambitions. It rejected the idea outright, choosing instead to maintain its aggressive posture towards the weakening Crusader states. As the political maneuvering intensified, the people of Acre found themselves caught in a web of conflicting interests, unsure of who to trust or which side would ultimately prevail. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Emir al-Ashraf Khalil was making preparations for a massive campaign into the Levant. He assembled a large and disciplined army composed of elite Mamluk troops alongside auxiliary forces drawn from various regions of his vast empire. At the head of this military force stood the renowned general, Baybars, a former slave-turned-warrior, famed for his tactical brilliance and unwavering loyalty to the Egyptian sultans. Under Baybars' leadership, the Mamluk forces were a formidable sight to behold, their ranks comprising fierce cavalrymen, well-trained infantry, and skilled archers, all equipped with weapons of the latest design and battle-tested in numerous campaigns. The Egyptian army's advance began with a series of smaller skirmishes as both sides tested each other's strength and resolve. However, as the weeks passed, the Crusader forces suffered a series of setbacks, forced to retreat further and further north along the coast, abandoning key positions and fortifications in their wake. The once proud Crusader banners now seemed to fly lower, their colors faded, mirroring the dimming hopes of their people. News of these defeats reached the Teutonic Order, shattering any illusions of easy conquests. Faced with the prospect of a united Crusader defense, they were forced to abandon their siege operations and rush reinforcements to the beleaguered cities of the south. Despite the arrival of Teutonic reinforcements, the combined Crusader forces, still riven by internal discord, struggled to mount an effective defense. The Teutonic Knights, ever mindful of their own interests, refused to commit their forces to risky ventures, preferring instead to await developments from the safety of their fortifications. This reluctance to engage the enemy, coupled with the lingering mistrust among the Crusader princes, left the defenders in a precarious position, vulnerable to surprise attacks and dwindling in numbers as time went on. Meanwhile, the Egyptians, under Baybars' steady leadership, continued their advance, tightening their grip on the coastal regions. With each passing day, the pressure on Acre intensified, and the Crusader lords realized that the fate of their dominion in the Levant rested precariously on the outcome of this final stand. Realizing the gravity of their situation, some Crusader leaders began to advocate for peace talks with the Egyptians. However, their overtures were coldly received. Baybars, eager to capitalize on his momentum and sensing the Crusader disarray, was in no mood to negotiate. For him, the capture of Acre, the last remaining stronghold of the Crusader kingdom, was a matter of when, not if. With negotiations failing, the Mamluk army prepared to deliver the final blow. The siege of Acre commenced with the Mamluk forces establishing a tight cordon around the city, cutting off all supplies and communication with the outside world. Day and night, the Egyptian soldiers bombarded the city walls with catapults and battering rams, relentlessly assaulting the gates, attempting to breach the defenses and force their way inside. Whenever the attacking forces grew weary, slave girls dressed as houris or celestial maidens of paradise would appear dancing and singing, urging them on to greater efforts. Every time an attacker fell, he was immediately replaced by another, ensuring the assault never ceased. For the besieged Crusaders, life within the city walls turned into a nightmare. Food and water ran short, and the streets became a graveyard of the sick and dying. The stench of decay hung heavy in the air, mingling with the sounds of despair and the cries of the wounded. As the siege dragged on, desperation grew, and with it, the willingness to flee or surrender. Amidst this chaos, an unlikely figure emerged to rally the Crusader troops. A certain Baldwin, inspired by tales of heroic deeds and fueled by youthful zeal, rallied the demoralized defenders, organizing them into combat groups. These bands, composed of foot soldiers, archers, and mounted knights, fought with renewed vigor, determined to break through the Mamluk lines and escape the city. Although their assaults initially met with heavy losses, these daring attempts served to delay the inevitable for a time. Yet even as the Crusaders made their desperate stand, the Mamluk army remained steadfast in its determination to capture Acre. With patient persistence, the Egyptians continued their relentless attacks, their sights set on breaching the city walls and ending the Crusader presence in the Holy Land once and for all. But perhaps it was fate itself that had decreed an end to the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. After several months of relentless siege, the Crusader forces finally began to buckle under the sustained pressure. On July 12, 91, as dawn broke over the battered city of Acre, the Mongol soldiers pressed their assault with renewed vigor. Amidst the deafening roar of their war cries and the clash of steel on steel, a group of Egyptian soldiers managed to breach the city walls, creating a breach wide enough for their comrades to pour through. Realizing the breach was too great to be repaired, the Crusader leaders gave the order to abandon the city. Thousands of Crusaders fled toward the sea, hoping to escape across the waves. However, the Mamluk cavalry swiftly intercepted them, capturing, killing, or driving many back into the city. Those who sought refuge in the temple church were either slain or taken prisoner. And so, after 2 centuries of intermittent presence in the Holy Land, the last major Crusader stronghold in the east fell, leaving the region in darkness once more. The Crusader kingdoms, once symbols of European Christian ambition, had finally met their demise leaving behind nothing but echoes of a glorious past and the enduring legacy of a dream deferred. Thank you for watching. The Grand Master of the Knights Templar had been accused of heresy and summoned to a church council in Poitiers for trial. But when Jacques de Molay left his home in Normandy to attend this hearing, he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by several hundred knights, many of whom were armed with swords and battle axes. Although he claimed to be going to a council to defend himself against charges brought by King Philip the Fair, rumors spread about his true intentions to seize the French crown jewels and take King Philip hostage. This atmosphere of secrecy and suspicion turned to full-blown paranoia when messengers from the king arrived demanding that de Molay surrender without delay. De Molay refused, however, and instead retreated to Chinon, a small village in Touraine. There he fortified himself inside the Château de Chinon, hoping that the villagers would protect him. The villagers did come to his aid, attacking the royal bailiff who tried to enter the castle, killing him and sending his head tumbling down the hill. The townspeople felt that they were protecting Damali because they thought the false charges against him were politically motivated and the arrest was actually an attempt to confiscate the riches of the Knights Templar, a suspicion that had some truth to it. After staying in the castle for nearly 2 months, Damali finally decided to leave Chinon. He was escorted by hundreds of heavily armed Templars. In fact, it looked like a small army accompanying the Grand Master. He probably hoped that if he showed force, no one would try to stop him. But Damali was wrong. As soon as he set out, King Philip's men ambushed and killed many of his escort. Realizing that he had made a mistake, Damali fled back to Chinon, where he surrendered unconditionally after learning that his knights had been defeated. When the knight escorting him informed Damali of his men's defeat, he said, "You tell me nothing new. I saw yesterday what I feared today. We have spared my knights such useless slaughter. I had sent them back to rejoin the others after seizing the bridges. For what good are these gentlemen to me now?" So Damali went to see the Bishop of Paris, where he was held prisoner. It is said that on the way to the bishop's house, he had to dismount from his horse because he was too upset to ride anymore. However, despite his apparent despair, Damali still managed to write letters to the Pope asking for help. But before the Pope received them, King Philip had already seized Paris and other important cities, making it impossible for any reinforcements to come to the Grand Master's aid. Damali was taken to Paris and imprisoned in the famous conciergerie on the Isle de la site in the Seine River. In his cell, he awaited his fate, uncertain of what would become of him, though aware that his future looked bleak. For weeks, the king delayed executing Damali, perhaps enjoying the spectacle of having his enemy so close and under his thumb. During this time, the Grand Master spent much of his time praying in solitude until one day, he was visited by a local Franciscan friar. This friar was supposedly kind and pious, and he brought Damali some books to pass the time. One of these books contained the Gospels of Nicodemus, which tells the story of Christ's life from his birth until his death and resurrection. The stories in this book, especially those depicting Jesus' miracles, seem to have given the Grand Master some comfort during his darkest hours. He began reading the Bible extensively, a habit that continued until his death. And it was said that he was found reading the same book when he was burned at the stake. But while Damali may have found temporary solace in religion, the outside world was preparing for his demise. Rumors swirled around Paris that the executioners would soon arrive to take the Grand Master from his cell in the conciergerie to the Place de la Pucelle for execution. Many people came to watch the spectacle, including women and children. Some even climbed trees or scaffolding erected for building work in order to get a better view. Others staked out spots along the route to the execution ground the night before, ensuring that they would be first in line to witness the burning of the Grand Master. On the appointed day, a large crowd gathered at the cagery to see Damali for the last time before he was led away. An ox cart waited to carry the condemned, but the Grand Master didn't want to ride in it. Instead, he walked out of the prison wearing a white robe and carrying a cross made of oak branches. He was barefoot and did not seem afraid as he approached the cart and mounted it. Two Franciscan friars walked on either side of him, holding up shields to protect him from blows dealt by spectators eager to strike the condemned. As the cart moved through the crowds, Damali raised his cross and called upon God and the Virgin Mary to help him bear his suffering. One woman in the crowd cried out, "Strike off his head and let us have done with it," to which Damali replied, "God will judge you more severely than I can for what you have just said." Then, looking toward Notre Dame Cathedral, he added, "I am going where I desire to go more than anything else in the world." And as he passed beneath the cathedral, it was said that God spoke to him and told him, "Jacques, be courageous. You are my servant. Today I shall give you your reward." These words gave Damali strength to face his grim fate. From Notre Dame, the procession moved onto the square where the execution was to take place. As the crowd pressed closer to the cart, some people reached out and tore strips of cloth from Damali's robe. Though he didn't seem to notice, the knights guarding the cart smashed the hands of anyone who dared touch the Grand Master. Eventually, they arrived at the Place de la Pucelle and the four executioners helped Tamale descend from the cart. At this point, someone in the crowd shouted, "Here comes the Grand Master," and all present began shouting the same words. The Grand Master remained calm as the crowd parted to allow him to walk to the center of the square. From there, he ascended an elevated platform and stood on a stone slab surrounded by four stakes driven into the ground. Each stake was topped with a wooden block and a pile of wood lay beside each block. Two of the blocks were covered in resin, while the one closest to the Grand Master was bare. One of the Franciscan friars told Tamale to kneel on the bare block, but he refused, saying, "I wish to die standing among you, for I am not a heretic." "May God damn me if I am lying," the friar suggested that he kneel on the block used for executions anyway, but Tamale wanted to show everyone that he was innocent and did not fear death. While this conversation took place, the executioners stripped Tamale of his robe and bound his arms behind his back with a rope. After threatening to beat them, the guards allowed the friars to untie the ropes, then retied them properly. At this point, the Grand Master was offered the chance to save himself by renouncing the errors of his ways. He declined this offer. A wooden mallet was then handed to him and Tamale picked it up to protect himself from blows from the executioners. However, the guards snatched it away and struck the first blow, knocking the Grand Master off balance. Another guard struck him in the shoulder, causing him to fall. The third guard rushed forward and placed a red-hot musket ball in the wound. The Grand Master cried out and fell onto the ground, still conscious. Two of the executioners dragged the knight toward the nearby pile of wood while the third lit a torch. Before setting fire to the wood, one of the executioners brought the flaming torch close to the Grand Master's face and asked him if he wanted to retract his statements about being innocent. Again, Tamale refused, telling the executioner to put the torch to his beard instead, which he did. As the Grand Master was thrown onto the pyre, he cursed King Philip, saying, "May God curse the king and the pope, and I hope they will die within this year." Ironically, both Philip and Pope Clement V died within the following 12 months, possibly from illness. After Tamale had been engulfed by flames, the two friars present stepped forward to remove the stakes supporting the pyre. However, the crowd yelled at them and a fight broke out, causing the friars to flee for safety. As the fire raged, people struggled to get close enough to see the Grand Master burning. Some succeeded and returned home with charred pieces of wood as souvenirs, while others were forced to remain far away. Still, they could hear the Grand Master reciting the Lord's Prayer until he was consumed by the fire and his screams faded into the smoke. In the aftermath, onlookers salvaged what they could from the remains of the pyre and the crowd began to disperse. This marked the end of the Knights Templar, one of the most legendary military orders in history. And the death of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, became a symbol of the persecution of this ancient institution. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out another video. Thank you for watching.